Welcome to Realtor Talk with Steph and Cal.
Hey, we're here.
We're here to just talk about real estate and help you guys understand how to buy and sell it.
Yeah, and I mean, like, lots of other things too.
Well, yeah, I mean, we need to come up with a better intro.
Yeah. Better intro coming soon at some point.
Under construction.
Yeah, that's that's kind of funny, actually. So today we wanted to talk about what is the PLN? I feel like I obviously meet new clients all the time, and they still kind of a lot of them have never heard of it before.
It's like, ooh, it's a secret. Everyone wants to know what's in the private listing network. It's like, yeah, just.
And I mean, what is the PLN? It literally stands for Private Listing Network, right?
Yes.
And there's lots of pros, cons. It's funny because some people still, and even other realtors ask me, well, why do you like the PLN?
Love the PLN.
Me too. And I literally had an appraiser last week go, I don't understand the PLN. Like, why do people use it? You know? And there's so many benefits to it. I'm a huge fan. And Kelly and I are going to run through some of those.
Well, yeah. So to tell you what the private network, it's what it sounds like. It's basically not separate, but it's still in the MLS, but it's a private listing network where you put listings up that are not available for people to see on Zillow, on Redfin, on all those sites. The only way that you know a private listing is on the market is if you're working with an agent, because you cannot have access to a private listing unless you have an agent or unless you heard about it somehow. But it's a really good thing for both buyers and sellers, honestly.
I think so too. I think it is a powerful tool for realtors in general because it's giving us some control back as far as listings and advertising them and talking about them. And without sharing it with every Tom, Dick, and Harry. And
I want to make a mix of all of the things that you say in these podcasts. Pain in the Keister. That's a good one. What did you just say? Who are those names?
I have a Tom, Dick, and Harry.
Like, who is Tom, Dick, and Harry? Say Joe Schmo.
You know what? Shout out to my mom because she is a total, she has sayings for everything. I think it's a little bit of a Southern thing.
No, and you want to know what I said the other day where I'm like, I've never said that before, and it was to you.
What?
Ciao.
Ciao. You did. Wait a minute.
Stephanie.
I heard you say it, and
I literally hung up, and I go, I've never said that word in my life. Mind you guys, if you've ever talked to Stephanie on the phone.
I say ciao all the time.
Ciao, amigo, is how she hangs up, or talk to you later, Gator.
Yeah.
She's so corny, but yesterday when I said ciao, I'm not kidding. I looked at my phone, and I'm like, who the hell am I?
It's so funny that you say that because I literally, when you said ciao.
We haven't talked about it yet.
We did not talk about it. We hung up and I thought to myself, she just said ciao. This is what I literally thought. And I was
if you know me, I've never said that ever.
No, but I thought it was hilarious and I love it.
All right, back to the private listing network.
Back to the private listing network. But the way I describe it to clients is it's basically a folder inside the MLS, which
that's a good way to put it.
Is the multiple listing service. And that's what houses all of our listings. And the MLS is the main hub that powers all the public websites that you guys go on to see if listings are there. Okay. So on those public websites, you are not seeing the private listing network. Okay. And so again, that's something, a great reason to reach out to Kelly or I or your realtor.
Yeah, because ZenList, because it's an exclusive search that you need to be invited to by an agent. It's not something that you could just, go in and toggle on. ZenList, for the most part, I know ZenList there's certain brokerages that can restrain from their listings being on the private listing network. So not all of them are on ZenList, but I always will do a separate search on the MLS. So they're not only getting the ZenList ones, but they're also getting ones that maybe ZenList doesn't have access to as well.
Right, exactly. So I think the biggest perk I love about the private listing network for my sellers is the fact that you don't accrue market time.
Yes.
And I also want to say that this is a very much an Illinois thing. I know that
they don't do it much in Indiana?
They don't because last I checked it was you had only 3 days that you could be on the private listing network.
Wow.
And then you have to go public.
Here you can live on that thing, baby.
And it's awesome. God bless Illinois. We need some perks for our state. But so if somebody's listening out of state in Florida, I have no idea what they do there. But the great thing about the PLN here is that you don't accrue any market time when you're in the PLN, which all of us know, or not all of us, but I often explain to my sellers, the biggest killer on your sale price almost always is market time.
Yep.
Market time is like the kiss of death. I want to avoid it by any way that I can, because the minute you hit 30 plus days, people start going, huh,
what's wrong with it?
well, and I mean, nowadays it's like 2 weeks, a week,
A
10
week.
days. People are like, well, what's wrong with it? Why hasn't anybody offered on it yet? I'm like,
Yes.
I don't know. Interest rates are still 7%, you know?
So let me ask you this. So why the public, or why the private network when you could open it up to the public? What are the main reasons? Who's a good candidate for it? Why to use it?
So and I like to put actually anything that I can, I like to put in the private network for at least 2 weeks before we go public. One,
You're going to need those weeks to be like clearing out and getting things ready anyways. So why not have that pre-exposure is how I see it.
exactly. And I like to, if I'm at my listing appointment and the client's house is clean and they don't have to do a ton to get ready, I'm like, let's put it in the private network now while we're waiting for professional photos. Maybe they're painting one bedroom. Maybe they're fixing one door. There could be a very small little laundry list of things that they have to do in order to get ready. And that is a great opportunity. Let's not waste that prime time, prime spring market. Let's put it on the private network now. And it could benefit us later. So for instance, you asked me, why do I like to go in the private network? Or who's a good candidate?
I guess,
for it,
yeah,
right?
who's a good, because it's all situational. I mean, the private network, it could be just something for as minuscule as like, okay, just a pre thing before you hit the market. But it's also people, like I've had sellers that like, they didn't really want their home blasted out on like Zillow and
That's
Facebook.
true.
Like some people
Yeah.
are really private.
Yeah, that's true.
So I think that's a really good, like you don't have to, you see all of our social media posts of, videos and photos everywhere. And sometimes people really don't want their house out there like that. And that is totally fine. I just think the private network is a really good way to passively get your house out there. And then plus, on top of putting it, it's not like we just put you in the private network and then boom, call it a day. Like then there's a lot of in-house marketing that goes with that.
Yes.
I'll send an email blast to all local agents, like check the private network, this and that. It's a good way to test a higher price. If you're on the fence of
Totally.
if you want to overprice, usually I'm like, let's try that in the private network first and see what happens, because it's a good way to.
And even if, let's say that there's not a lot of comps and you have a really rare or unique property that it's really hard to price appropriately. And we could have another podcast on this, just talking about appraisals and
Yes.
pricing and all that. We can go on a whole other topic because.
Let's do appraisals next time.
Okay, well,
I feel like I can go on and on about appraisals
next
because-
time.
Yeah.
But if we're unsure about the sale price, a great area to collect feedback on, or let's say we put in the private network and we have 0 showings. Well, probably overpriced.
Yeah, you're
You know?
probably overpriced. And this is where I always am like, full disclaimer, I say this to my clients too, is it is such a gamble. So in order for an agent to know what's in the private listing network, they need to physically check the private listing network on the MLS. So
Well, unless they have a search set up for their clients.
yes, 100%.
Right,
but
right.
I'm just saying that there is a lot of times, and this actually just happened on we went on for a higher price just to, and it wasn't, I always like to give a range. Like when I say high price, I wouldn't say like astronomical, unreasonable, just on the higher end. Yeah. And then depending on what type of action or interest we get at that price on the private, it helps us get a feel for what we should go public at. But there's been times where we've listed a little bit on the higher end. It was crickets, and then we dropped it, went public, had multiple offers, and exceeded our private price. And I've also had times where we list on the higher end and then they get a lot of interest, and then I'm like, okay, we're in this right ballpark range. Like it really is kind of a hit or a miss, but I think that it's never a disservice to go into the private network, especially during those beginning times where you're just going to be clearing out and cleaning out anyway.
Yeah. And I always tell people, I'm not going to go in the private network and like undercut the market and price a property super cheap.
No, right.
Although I have, when I've been on the buy side, I have had clients snag up properties in the private network that I did think were priced very well, which is a plus from the buy side.
Yes.
But as far as my listings go, I always try to price it at a price that my clients would be super happy selling it at, so that if we do sell on the private network, everybody's happy. You know, you don't want to undercut the market in the private network, and then, you know, you miss out.
Well, exactly. And that was actually something that's happened to me in the past where we put it on the private, and it was like the first day somebody wanted that private price, wanted it. And my sellers had kind of that mindset of, wow, if somebody offered this on the first day of being private, what else? And I get it. It's human nature. But again, at the end of the day, we have to remember what the house is really worth. And maybe that is the only buyer who is willing to pay that price. And guess what? It was. We went public, and we ended up still going under contract with those original people. That's how much they loved the house. But
you went public?
Yes. And then because it was like they thought that, okay, if this one person is, we're going to have people knocking down the door to get it. And it doesn't always work that way.
So what happened when you went public?
We went public, and of course we got interest, but not at the price that the private was willing to pay.
Really?
Yes.
So did you lose money going public? Or was it the same price?
No, it wasn't. And so this was because we were very lucky to have those buyers who just truly weren't emotional in it. And it was like, hey, this was our offer. And they were kind of understanding, actually. Like, we know you're in the private. It was a very rare, weird thing, but it was just, it proved a point in the sense of, like, I always point out to my sellers too, 9 times out of 10, obviously there's an exception to every rule, but the people who see your house first and the people who submit an offer on your house first are likely the ones who love your house the most. And
100%. That's a great explanation.
And likely those are the ones that you want to sell your house to because they love it the most, versus waiting and waiting and waiting for these people who are like, all right, let's go
settling.
Let's go see that house that's been on the market now for 5 days. We might have some leverage. Like, that's going to be a lot of people's mindset.
5 days.
Well, no, but I'm saying that
10 days.
10 days. But yeah, just keep that in mind as a seller, that it's just like the grass is not always greener, and you need to remember the end goal that you talked about before you went on the market, and don't let going on the market just completely put you off the rails, like put you off track.
Yeah. No, 100%. So basically, we're huge fans of the private network.
There's so many different ways.
Cons? Do you think like there's any cons?
Obviously less exposure. I mean, right?
Yeah. I mean, that'll be some people's argument, but I mean, I'm a big fan.
Sorry guys, we cut out there for a second, but that about wraps it up for all things Private Listing Network. Don't forget to tune in next time. Bye.